Good morning, everyone. This microphone's working fine, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Today we're reading Canto 1, Chapter 5, texts 1 through 10. So starting with text number 1. Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. Text number 1. Sutta Goswami said, "Thus the sage amongst the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the brahmanas, Vedavyas." So it's very poetic. The sage amongst the gods, or the demigods, Narada, and the rishi, or the sage amongst the brahmanas there on earth. They're meeting together and they're talking. So I want to mention before we move on that in the purport here, Prabhupada says that Narada was smiling because he knew what was on Vyasadev's mind. He knew that what the cause of his disappointment was, and therefore he was smiling. And this, what does this remind you of another scenario where someone's smiling out of context? Yes. Krishna and the Gita, right? It's a little bit surprising. You're like, why is the person smiling? It's kind of a distressful situation, but so here again we see gently smiling, apparently smiling is the word. So he's smiling, not in a way of like laughing at the other person or making them feel bad. It's just smiling because because if someone already knows, like, oh, don't worry, it's going to play out okay, right? He already knows what's going to happen and how it's going to go. So it's just, and same with Krishna and the Gita. It's like, okay, I see, Arjuna's distressed here and Krishna's gently smiling because Krishna knows that everything will be okay. That higher perspective. It allows us sometimes to smile in the darkest times because we know, like, at the end of the day, this is not that important right now, right? So, okay, text number 2. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara, Narada inquired, "Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization?" So it's like a loaded question. It reminds me of when Arjuna came back and Yudhishthira was asking him questions, right? Like, so did this happen? Like, have you, kind of these questions to sort of buffer the time almost. They're not, it's, because the answers are obvious, but the question is still given. So text number 3, your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. Okay, text 4. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all of this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? My dear Prabhu. In the word for word, Prabhupada translates Prabhu, as my dear sir. My dear sir. So, kind of hypothetical questions, like, why would you be unhappy? So Vyasadeva replies, Srila Vyasadeva said, "All you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one Brahma who is self-born. without mundane father and mother. So he's the Narada Muni is the son of Lord Brahma. So he's the son of one who is self-born. Why is he self-born? Brahma, Lord Brahma. He comes out of a lotus flower at the navel of Vishnu, right? So yeah, and another way to describe that is he's self-manifest in a way, right? People think, well, he didn't really have a mother and a father. He just appeared out of a lotus flower. So he's considered self-born. So then he continues, my Lord, he's saying to Narada, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead. In the word for word, it's Purusha, the personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. So again, in this one, he's glorifying Narada, saying, everything that's mysterious normally to all of us people down here is known to you because you're directly connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're a servitor of him. So yeah, Prabhupada says here a devotee like Narada can act wonderfully by his spiritual perfection, which every individual is trying to attain. Narada is a 100% perfect living being, although not equal to the personality of God. So text number 7, like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds. And like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive supersoul. Please, therefore, find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. So you can see he's very distressed because he's doing all the things that you're supposed to do, right? He's even writing amazing literature on Krishna and the pastimes of, or surrounding, I should say, the history, where Krishna comes in, like the Mahabharata. He's writing histories and he's writing scriptures for people to relate to. The Mahabharata, he specifically wanted it to be very relevant for people. And he's still feeling despondent, so he's very distressed. What to do? So Narada says, you have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. Okay, so that's the answer right there. And then text number 9 continues. Although, great sage, you have very broadly described the 4 principles beginning with the religious performances, you have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. In text 10. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, and this is the one we'll read the purport for, okay? So, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Those words are like a pilgrimage for crows, right? Those words which don't describe the glories of the Lord. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So let's do the Sanskrit for this verse. Nayad vachas chitra padam harer yasho jagat pavitram pragrinita karyachet tadvaya samtirtam ushanti manasa na yatra hamsa niramantyusik shaya. In the third line, it says Vayasam Tirtham. That means Vayasam is crows, Tirtham is place, right? Tirtha. So crow place, Vayasam Tirtham. And in the 4th line, you have the word Hamsa, which is the swan. So those were juxtaposed here. So, na yad vachas chitra padam harer yasho. Jagat pavitram pragrinita karyichit. Tadvaya samtirtam ushanti manasa. Nayatra hamsa niramantyu shikshaya. Okay, please chant. Okay, thank you. So let's do the word for word together. Na, not, yet, that, vacha, vocabulary, chitra padam, decorative, hare, of the Lord, yasha, glories, jagat, universe, pavitram, sanctified, pragranita, described, karhachit, hardly, tat, that, vayasam, crows, tirtham, place of pilgrimage, ushanti, think, manasa, saintly persons, na, not, yatra, where, hamsa, all perfect beings, niramanti, take pleasure, mushikshaya, those who reside in the transcendental abode. I want to mention one thing, and many of you already know this, but in Sanskrit, when you have, if you scroll up to the last line there, when you have a Y at the end of a word, so it can feel like a tongue twister, right? It's just like, but really you just put that in front of the first vowel of the next word. So if there's a vowel here, so you would just go, Niramantu, like that, Niramantu Sika Shaya. But if we try to say Niramanti and then Ushi, and then it just throws up all the syllables. So I find that very helpful. So let's do the translation together. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So, purport. So, place of pilgrimage for crows. Who here has seen crows? Raise your hand. Seen crows? Has everyone here seen a crow? Everyone, right? Right. There are. I feel like they're around right now. Like in the last week, I've seen lots of crows. Yeah. They want some mercy. So crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. So you know that saying, right? Yes, right? So Prabhupada's creatively using that and changing it a little bit. So they're not of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. The fruitive workers, or passionate men, are compared to the crows, whereas the all-perfect saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as the passionate fruitive workers take pleasure in wine and woman and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in the places where crows are assembled for conferences and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water, nicely decorated, with stems of lotus flowers in variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. I'm curious, has everyone seen a swan? Not everyone, right? So New Vrindavan has some swans here, if you've ever been there. But yeah, they're not as common. There is a duck pond. They call it the duck pond, northeast side of near the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Occasionally, I think there'll be a swan, but it's rare, right? Have you ever seen a swan there?
Yeah, there's actually two that live there.
Oh, okay. So there's two that live there right now. Yeah. So there's a black swan. Two black swans there. Wow. Yeah. And they're usually very loyal to each other, so they usually have like their mate. So nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it's not possible to bring them up into the same rank and file. Similarly, there are different kinds of literature for different types of men of different mentality. Mostly the market literatures which attract men of the crows categories are literatures containing refused remnants of sensuous topics. They are generally known as mundane talks in relation with the gross body and subtle mind. They are full of subject matter described in decorative language, full of mundane similes and metaphorical arrangements. Yet, with all of that, they do not glorify the Lord. Such poetry and prose on any subject matter is considered decoration of a dead body. Spiritually advanced men who are compared to the swans do not take pleasure in such dead literature, which are sources of pleasure for men who are spiritually dead. Sources of pleasure for men who are spiritually dead. This purport is very poetic. These literatures in the modes of passion and ignorance are distributed under different labels, but they can hardly help the spiritual urge of the human being. And thus the swan-like spiritually advanced men have nothing to do with them. Such spiritually advanced men are called also manasa because they always keep up the standard of transcendental voluntary service to the Lord on the spiritual plane. This completely forbids fruitive activities for gross bodily sense satisfaction or subtle speculation of the material egotistic mind. So they're always transcendental voluntary service, that's their absorption. And that, therefore, they don't have room for gross bodily sense satisfaction or subtle speculation. That's what that is saying. Social literary men, scientists, mundane poets, theoretical philosophers, and politicians who are completely absorbed in the material advancement of sense pleasure are all dolls of the material energy. Dolls of the material energy. They take pleasure in a place where rejected subject matters are thrown. According to Swami Sridhara, this is the pleasure of the prostitute hunters. But literatures which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoyed by the Paramahamsas. What does that mean? Literally, Paramahamsa? Supreme Swan. Hamsa is swan, right? Or great personality. Just great personalities are often described as swan-like, right? So Paramahamsa, supreme swans, who have grasped the essence of human activities. So I'll read that again. Literatures which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoyed by the Paramahamsas who have grasped the essence of human activities. I'll just read the translation again. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, when you think about a place of pilgrimage for crows, what kind of place would that look like? What are some words that come to mind? Trash can. Okay, what else? Walmart parking lot. Okay, very descriptive. Yeah. Outside here? Outside here at certain times of the day. Okay. Graveyard. Dirty. What kind of atmosphere does a whole, when you're, the other day I was walking under a tree, it was just crowded with crows. It was just conference, what was it Prabhupada said? Conferences and meetings. So there was a conference going on with crows, and I was walking under the tree, and I noticed that it was very loud. Lots of like energy and lots of intensity, right? They're making loud sounds, and they're like flying in and out, and there's just like a lot of passionate energy, right? Passionate energy of the crows. Anything else that comes to mind when you think of crows? Yeah. Yeah, lots of conversation happening, and not very meaningful, right? Not very meaningful conversation. It's just like, hey, where do we go next? I don't even know what they're talking about. I'm kind of glad we can't understand it, right? It's like it would be really distressing to understand every single bird what they're saying. Like imagine you're trying to do your japa and you're like, they're all talking about these mundane things, right? Chris?
Yeah, crows are really smart.
Crows are very smart. Yes, that's another thing about them. They're often the thing is they're often given a bad rap, like the crows, right? And they are for metaphors for scripture. They're compared to the swans, and therefore we look at them in that way. However, yes, they have this side to them. They're very intelligent, and so sometimes people have pet crows. They have pet crows. They can train them. They can go and they can be taught to go and take things. They like shiny gold, whatever, things like that. Yes.
Their little call is not really what we think of as the most pleasing bird sound. So similarly, topics that are not about Krishna, in the beginning they might seem nice, but ultimately not really satisfying. You don't get satisfaction from watching random YouTube videos.
Yeah, so those random YouTube videos are you're saying those are like the cause of the crow, right? Like they're tempting, and then like after a while, you're like, doesn't feel so good. That sound, even physically, the sound of the crow is not very pleasant to the ear long term, right? It's a little jarring. Yes. Okay.
So just think that the food workers, they're passionate, they're also very smart, they're very intelligent.
Yes.
But they're just using it not to inquire about the right subject.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, so it's not, we're not saying a whole category of people is just stupid, like, oh, crows are just dumb. No, they're intelligent birds. And if we continue that metaphor, like you said, then yes, how we use our intelligence determines which group we're in, which category you could say. Crows are very intelligent. And so we're not really giving a bad rap to the bird itself. Like if you meet a crow, be kind. We don't have like a prejudice against crows per se, like the birds outside, but it's just the metaphor to create that contrast of groups of people. Right? Advaita, did you want to add something?
If we're talking about nice things about crows,
yeah,
they're beautiful feathers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They're like not just black, but they're like shiny black. And sometimes Krishna's hair is compared to
yes,
the color of the crow.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, it's multicolor. It's like oil on the street. It's like many rainbow colors inside of the black. Yeah, beautiful. That's a nice thing to remember. Yes, Krishna's hair is described as the color of the crow feathers. So there was a composer, Tchaikovsky. He wrote a song, or he composed a piece, and it's entitled Swan Lake. So he didn't title it Crow Lake. So why do you think that is? So what is it about swans that so many people write the swan dance? There'll be like different pieces of music and art and about the swans. Yes.
So elegant. It's such an elegant creature. I guess that has to do with their
Elegance, yes. Graceful. Right. So the description, so in the scriptures we hear how that metaphor is also given, that if you were to put a swan in the water and there's like some milk there, that they can extract that, just that, and leave the water in their beak. So that's also like a poetic description of what the Vaishnavas can do. They can extract goodness from the rest, right? They can pull out the spiritual, they can extract Krishna from a place where there's not very many spiritual things happening. Well, I was so I've actually done some research, and I've asked different devotees. I haven't come to like a concrete answer. I don't know if anyone else has it. Adisham?
I heard directly from Rajendra Maharaj. He said when he heard the story, he wanted to check it. He took a gallon of milk to the lake to pour the milk, and he saw the swan would drink the milk, and the water would come from the pores on top of his beak.
Okay.
So he decided to increase his faith in Krishna consciousness.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So like you said, they have a memory. So it makes sense though, because they're in the water, like they're not wanting to just drink all the water. They're wanting the milk or the seeds or the whatever's there, the algae, right? So it makes sense that they would be able to separate out those things. Yeah. Okay. So so we have evidence right there. Okay. So some of you are probably thinking, let's go bring some to the duck pond and see what happens. So we have these two groups. And so if we think of crows in general, right, loud, chaotic energy, right, they're chatting and they're flying around. And then we think of swans, quiet, floating about, serene. These are the generalities that we're saying about these birds, right? There's many other aspects. So then we think about two groups of people, the transcendentalists, who are self-satisfied. They don't need to make loud sounds. They don't need to be flying around very passionately. They can be self-contained. And if you think about swans, they're very often just serene. Sometimes they make loud honking sounds, that's true. And sometimes the devotees do as well, right? They need to share something. It's not so, and metaphors fall short in ways. It's not exact parallels we're saying here. But the general idea is that, yes, the swan-like devotees, they can extract the substance from the water. They can extract the substance from any place they go. Whereas the crows are oriented more towards dirty, dark, or rubbish areas, right? That just more hectic areas. You'll see lots of crows in places where there's garbage, for instance. You'll rarely ever see a swan where there's a garbage pile. So that is our main takeaway from this comparison. The swan-like devotees, they gravitate towards those literatures, those things that have substance spiritually. Now, I would like you to Google, just write in two skeletons sitting at a table. And I don't think the image is actually openable, but you'll see the image in small here, right? On the upper left there. I don't think, so just scroll in a little. Okay, so if you think about Prabhupada in this purport, he was saying, swans don't take pleasure in such dead literatures. He was comparing the literatures that don't have the substance, spiritual substance to them, as being dead. And then later again, he says, these dead literatures are sources of pleasure for men who are spiritually dead. So in the spirit of Halloween coming up, I thought, let's look at this for a minute. So when two people are sitting at a table talking, right? These two people, like, they look like they're in love. They're holding hands. Maybe they're having some affection for each other, right? And it's funny because we normally glamorize. There's other scenes of like skeletons in a bench holding hands, and like one of them has long hair. But they're like skeletons, like romantic scenes, but they're skeletons. And so that's actually us underneath the skin, right? We're just skeletons, and we think we're so like romantic and dreamy and pretty and stuff, and then we're just these bones. So I was reflecting on how when the substance is not there in our conversations between each other, when it's missing that eternal aspect, then it's not very different than just two skeletons talking, because it doesn't affect the soul, right? The conversation or the literature or the interactions, they're surface level, and they don't. It's a kind of a graphic image, but they don't really go deeper because they don't affect the trajectory of the soul. They stay on the, Prabhupada says here, on the mind, the body and mind level. The level of the body and the mind. The gross body and the subtle mind. So they're generally known as mundane talks in relation with the gross body and subtle mind. So we can reflect when we're going about our day, like, am I having only like dead conversations or alive conversations? And so what's the difference? How does that look? What does that look like for you when you think about having an alive conversation with someone? How would that manifest in your day-to-day life? First of all, what's a dead conversation? Okay, yes. Only one person is interested in it. That's very good. Okay. Okay, so apart from Krishna or Krishna's service related. Okay, so if you're on campus and you're talking to someone, and you're talking to them about what they're doing in grad school and like how they're doing, how's their grandma? Is that a where's the line here with like, is that an alive spiritual conversation, or is that a dead conversation now because I'm not putting Krishna at the center?
I think specifically in that situation, it's bringing Krishna to them. So it's bringing the bar down from such a high level of talking about these transcendental literatures out in the mundane world, and bringing it down and saying, yeah, like, people need to also know that we can connect to each other to then connect to Krishna, and building a relationship first between someone is very important.
Yes, thank you. You said that beautifully. Yeah, so it's really important for us to have human interactions with people so that they don't feel like there's just two worlds. Like, oh, it's like, I don't care at all about anything that's happening for your body because you're just that skeleton. I don't really care, right? And you can turn that down now, yeah. Or I just, like, I don't care about that, and I just want to talk to you about like what I've read today in the Bhagavatam, like meet you on campus and I'm just going at it, right? So there's something in between where it's still a service and it's still Krishna centered when we are acting from that place of humanness, like kindness, caring, interested in another person's experience of their gross body and subtle mind. Because right now that spirit soul is in that container, and they take that very seriously. We all do, right? We take our own inner, our life, our body, our mind, very important for each person. And in one sense, it is important because it's the house for the soul, right? So it is important in that sense that it is the vehicle in which we're going right now. And so it's our duty to care for it and take care of it and make sure it lives long so we can serve and we can keep advancing spiritually. And so therefore, to move about life in that mood, okay, there's a spirit soul there, And I need to first, I can't, there's this term, spiritual bypass, right? Just jump over everything. I don't care that you're depressed today. I'm going to talk to you about what to do. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, right? And that can be very off-putting to people, especially in today's culture. It's very, people don't like being preached at, right? Religious preaching, right? Bible thumping, all of that. So we can also go, okay, there's a spirit soul there. I really want to connect on a deeper level. It's just not going to be immediate. It's not going to be immediate. It's you have to first connect with that person, the fullness of them in this experience right now. What is their mind like? What is their body like? And what is their life like? What do they need from me? How can I connect and really make them feel at home? So I was thinking about when Prabhupada arrived when he was there in Boston, he was staying with that family, Sarah, and was it Sarah? Not Boston, Butler. Yes, Butler, Pennsylvania. Sally Agarwal, and I forget her. Gopal Agarwal, right? Sally and Gopal Agarwal. And then they had a little baby. And there's that famous picture of Prabhupada helping the baby walk his first steps. So Prabhupada was very, when he was with them, he was very personable. He would ask about their lives. And there was a Back to Godhead article where they were reflecting on him in the last couple of years. They were reflecting on his visit. And I think Sally was writing the article, and she was saying how friendly he was. He was just a friendly, grandfatherly type person, fatherly person to them, and a grandfatherly person to their child. He wasn't. He was helping them feel at home. He was their visitor. He was home. He was making them feel comfortable. He wasn't just going, "Hey, wake up first thing in the morning, sit down. I'm going to give you Bhagavatam class." Right? He was creating a human interaction and experience. And that's what stays with them. That's what stays with people. So when we read things like this, if we're feeling like, okay, I'm in a kind of in a black and white sort of mood today, if I read something like this, okay, I have to throw away every book in my house that doesn't directly talk about Krishna, right? There's going to be lots of books going in the trash. Lots of books on psychology, or what are other topics? Math, geometry. What else? History. Yeah, it's all rubbish, right? It's all dead. Yeah. Did you say the 5 love languages? There. 5 love languages for brahmachari. Yeah. So anyway, there's going to be lots of decluttering happening, right? So if we take this, okay, there's lots of dead literature in my bookshelf right now. I have to throw this all away. Donate it all to the Friends of the Library, right? So whenever we're understanding, whenever we're reading something like this that seems very this or that, then we have to apply our knowledge and our intelligence to this. And that's what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted to create thoughtful, intelligent devotees. So what does it actually mean? Does it mean carting my whole bookshelf to Friends of the Library? Okay, what does it mean? Kishori? Yeah, I think it's
as you said, if we're in that black and white mood, we can very easily take the very literal meaning of this translation. That black and white, this or that. But it's important, as you said, on one to create thoughtful, intelligent use. You could take, and in the bigger context of all of these spiritual scriptures, it also emphasizes that thoughtfulness. So this instruction here is to guide our thoughtfulness and passion, other qualities towards other people, to be regulated, but not as strictly hard and fast.
Thank you. Yes. Exactly. Yes. And actually, Narada, he's not telling Vyasadeva, okay, well, you wrote all those things. That was a waste. Let's go put them in the dumpster or compost pile because they're probably on little leaves at the time, right? So he's not saying that. He's saying going forward, how are we going to add to this? How are we going to add to this? How are we going to create more substance? Not like, oh, let's go in the past and go get rid of things. Let's see how we can use, and even how can we use what's already there, like the books in our bookshelf, the knowledge that we have, the degrees that we have, right? This is not saying like, oh, no one should get a degree. Prabhupada very much wanted intelligent devotees to go to college and get degrees and use their brains for Krishna. So what it is like more nuance, and to go, okay, these are books in my shelf right now. These are areas, I think for any one of us, if we have like a selective section of books, we have our areas of interest. Like some people are interested in certain topics and they'll have a section of books of things that are interesting to them. And let me see, because that's an area of interest of mine in the material world, let me see how I can use that to uplift, to create vehicles, opportunity for myself and others to come closer to Krishna. There's an area that I'm interested in. Okay, it's psychology or art or science, or, right, we have the whole Bhaktivedanta Institute. For all devotees who are interested in applying their brains to mundane topics with the purpose of creating that bridge between spirit and matter, right? To create that. Here we have something where we can all talk together, because yes, there's all these mundane topics that we're experts in. We have PhDs, we have research in them. And we also want to know higher, what's the higher purpose of life? And let's come together and let's discuss that and bring those two together. And so that suddenly a whole door opens up, right? A whole door of opportunity, because now we're not just throwing away our mundane knowledge, we're adding it, right? We're adding it to, we're actually, here's another way to think of it. We're putting the one in front of it. We're putting Krishna in front of it. Krishna in front of my bookshelf. Suddenly my bookshelf is effulgent, right? Because now I'm using that. The purpose of that is like, yes, I want to touch lives. I want to help uplift. I want to become swan-like, where when I go somewhere, I think, how am I affecting others? Am I being a crow-like devotee or a swan-like devotee? And I want to just mention in this connection that association it's very, very risky. Even in the company of devotees, we have to be very careful of the kinds of devotees that we spend time with. And I say that because lately, especially in the last few years, I feel like internet, there's all kinds of Hare Krishna scandals or whatever. There's all kinds of people who like to stay in the crow-like sangha of Hare Krishna scandals or politics or those kinds of feeds, and they'll just spend their days writing in these chats and like, oh, I saw this devotee doing that, and they'll post a picture. Did you see that devotee was doing that? Yes. Ooh, we can't trust anybody, right? The GBC, we can't. And the whole mood of like that crow, you could say the crow-like mood can actually happen even among devotees. So just because someone has a Sanskrit name or they're, chanting Hare Krishna or whatever, we have to be careful. We have to be discerning. Is this devotee also uplifting my consciousness? Or when I'm with this devotee, am I being pulled down? Do I notice my consciousness is becoming more discouraged? Am I getting more doubts by spending time with this devotee or these devotees? Do I suddenly question everything? Am I thinking, oh, all the GBC are da-da-da, right? Is that starting to happen for me? And if so, quick, go find a swan-like devotee to help. Go find someone who's going to uplift and help and guide, right? So both reflecting on who do I hang out with, which feathers do I connect with, and how do I show up for others? Am I being crow-like right now? When I'm with my friends at Christian House, am I saying like, oh, did you see that person? They threw away a lot of prasada in the garbage. Like, am I pointing out the negatives? Am I wanting to create gossip? Am I finding juice in that, like, political debate? Or I should go inside. Or am I the type of devotee that inspires others by how I speak? Do I find ways to connect things to philosophical thinking? Do I uplift wherever I go? Right? So when we talk about these groups, it's not just outside of us, it's us too. Who am I being? Am I being crow-like or swan-like right now? And that can be our question for ourselves. Am I helping to really reach a soul, or am I just keeping it all superficial because I'm in that consciousness? I don't want to get deep, right? I just want to keep it material. So those are some ways that we can use that metaphor in our life to reflect on how we are using our mundane knowledge. How are we showing that up in a way that's crow-like or swan-like? And how are we hanging out? Who are we choosing to spend time with? And then helping those, if we see devotees struggling, they seem to be really, there's lots of crow-like energy going on right now in this conversation, right? Let me see what I can do to add something that would uplift, like as the swan-like devotees would do. So any questions or thoughts on this?
When you were speaking about this spiritual conversation, I remember one commentary by one of the biggest Buddhist distributors in Russia. He's a sannyasi now. Maybe this comment might be useful for somebody who's starting to preach. He said, when we approach people on the street, if we don't feel certain friendship and love, what we can meditate on is this person, this soul has been through so many lifetimes. It's been a bug, it's been crushed on by something stepping on, it's been a rabbit, we've been eaten alive. So this personality has suffered so much. And this moment, now there's a chance to get out of it. So he said that realization will make us approach the person just the right way. And he said, when you also meet the person, your Paramatma helps you to find the words what to say. His Paramatma will help them understand that. So that's a very spiritual conversation.
Yeah, that's very nice. Your Paramatma will help you with the words, and their Paramatma, which is the same Supreme Person, will help them understand those words, right? And I like what you said about the urgency of realizing that this is a moment, this is a special moment in time where I have the opportunity to make it or break it for that person right now, in a sense. Obviously, it's Krishna's empowering us, but we're an instrument to that. So am I going to help them move forward right now, or am I going to detract them by doing something that's going to really off-put them to spiritual life? Gopi and then Advaita.
We touched upon how this verse and purport can seem a little bit extreme, and we looked at how to balance it more for ourselves. But I think there's another perspective that shows that it's not really that extreme. Mm-hmm. And that is, if we just put a historical lens on, then we'll realize that all civilizations, no matter if it's a more advanced civilization like the Roman Empire or the Persian Empire, or maybe just small groups of people, so-called primitive and nomadic with bows and arrows, across all time, human beings have always really relished speaking with each other about metaphysical topics and the afterlife, and all these kind of things. And only in the last few 100 years have we. So actually, that's what's extreme. It's our modern tendency to have a knee-jerk reaction, to be repulsed, and to want to get as far away from metaphysical topics as we can.
Wonderful point. Yes. Thank you. Advaita.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I heard there's another kind of swan that not only can separate the milk from water, but it can turn water into milk. Or Paramahamsas. And these are the devotees that can turn crows into swans, something that is less valuable, something that is ultimate value. That's the lens I take this purpose through. It is our job to examine our heart as we apply ourselves also.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. Yes.
Hi, Krishna. So I was reflecting a little bit on earlier Carly's point with the dead versus alive conversations. And there's something I heard before Krishna consciousness, but I actually really still like it, is that you have to meet people where they're at in terms of their spiritual progression. And so if somebody's on the body mind platform, it's kind of like you come to that door to greet them, to pull them in to the deeper part, but that means we also have to be really rooted in that deeper part so they don't pull us into the body mind platform. And even that can happen with devotees, if like it's happened to me at Christian house before. Somebody mentioned politics, and I just like was ripped to that other side of like, oh my gosh, you're right, the body mind platform. But it's also really nice because then at that point, I think it was Nanda like can knock you back. Like devotees we can pull each other back into that deeper platform of like, oh, remember Krishna, like that's what really matters. Like forget all the temporary stuff. Like stay rooted in that. So I was reflecting on how things like japa and sadhana can really help us root deeper in things like studying the scriptures. For me, like I've missed a couple days of class, but this feels like really grounding. Just since I was sick, it feels grounding to get back into literature and everything like that. I also had a question of, I've had experiences before with some like hesitance with devotees. For example, if trying to uplift others, some people might not want to be uplifted in that moment, or even kind of like lash out or have trouble with it. I guess, how do you kind of like ask or broach that subject, or do you just like leave it alone if somebody's not interested in it?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we don't want to jump in and rescue if someone doesn't want rescuing, because actually sometimes people just need to vent or want to just, I didn't want you to fix it, right? There's that thing. So that's a really good point. So we have to be thoughtful, and also just ask question like, would you like me to share something now that might uplift, or are you wanting to just, are you just needing me to, you just want me to hold space for your venting? Like, because that's the thing. It's we don't want to jump over what they're going through. We want to be there for them with what they want. Should we end, right? Or should we continue? Okay, last one. Can you use the microphone?
Gopi said, we don't necessarily have to uplift with our words. Our Kalindi told me on my first day that, just talking about the time of Krishna lunch, that we can meet people in so many ways beyond our words. We don't have to offer everyone bits of kindness and meeting them where they're at, specifically with conversation. It can be with a glance, it can be with our presence, it can be in so many ways beyond the word.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to fix it with words. We can just show up with our presence. That's sometimes, very often, what people just want. They just want presence and kind compassion. And I just want to quickly add that in your previous comment, you had mentioned that sometimes we can be pulled. We have to be careful, right? We're trying to help someone else, and then, we're kind of drowning with them. So that's why it's so important for us to always have our particular sangha, or a group that we really can rely on for strength in our sadhana and so on. So that when we're going out to try to help others, that we don't get influenced, like, we don't end up at the bar with the people we're trying to help, right? So that we have our group that we're with when we're going on like Sankirtan, Harinam. And so we're strong, and then we just go out, but then we have our support system. Yeah.
For after, but I do think maybe everyone would benefit. So he wrote the Mahabharata, and he's not feeling satisfied. And I was just wondering, as devotees, what our relationship with Mahabharata should be. Does it inspire God consciousness? Like, how should I approach that? Because he's unsatisfied after writing it. So what's our relationship with Mahabharata?
Well, it can be a source of great inspiration, and it can be really relatable to people, because it's discussing lives of humans that actually lived, so it can be a way for people who need that juicy, it's like a good story, right? It has like drama and everything in it, romance, everything you would want. Battles and Bhagavad, of course, and Bhagavad Gita is in the center. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is like so Bhagavad Gita is described as like scripture for beginners, and then Srimad Bhagavatam is like the PhD level of description of Godhead. And so therefore it was incomplete. It's not, he was dissatisfied because it was incomplete, not because that in itself is like poor or bad or anything like that. Bhagavad Gita is glorious and wonderful, but there was more to share, and that's why he felt incomplete. And that's the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the completion of that full thing. Yeah. And thank goodness for that, because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here today discussing Bhagavatam, right? If this hadn't come out. So
there's also perfect and
yes, perfect, more and more perfect, yeah. Always growing.
you should never be
Right. More and more complete.
We already say that you haven't specifically glorified pure devotional service to Lord Krishna or
Yes.
something like that, right?
Yeah. You haven't specifically, yeah, I lost the place, but yeah, something to that effect, and specifically glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead also in devotion to Him. Yeah, because Bhagavad Gita is there, but it's not. The focus wasn't Krishna and Krishna's connection. I mean, his pastimes and so on.
Yeah, speaking and speaking.
Yeah, and glorifying devotees' relationships with Krishna. The entire Bhagavatam is about devotees' loving relationships with Krishna. And so Mahabharata, yes, it's there, and then this is more, so more perfect. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you all so much for your participation. It was very lively. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.